Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to JonathanIsBadAtGames, where today we're taking a look at the July 2016 Humble Original, which is to say, Copoka. And Copoka really does something special with how it's played in terms of storytelling. It's not the most innovative gameplay. The gameplay is just you're a bird and you fly around from place to place, and that's pretty cool. But what's really special about it is the story that it tells and how it tells it, and I would say that it's about the video game equivalent of a short story, where it's got a quick pungent's not the right word, but a poignant point that really sticks with you after you play it and makes you think about some stuff. And the gameplay is kind of just, you fly around as the bird, and that's nice. What I just picked up was something that boosts your speed that I just so happened to come across. I don't remember where everything is. I played it for a little bit. There are 4 chapters to the story. I don't think I'm going to play through all of them, but I'm going to see if we can. Oh, okay, I'm going all over the place. There's something we could pick up. The objective is to pick things up for our nest and make it stronger, but you also catch these little glimpses of the society around you that you're flying over all the time.
Damn it. That idiot better start acting like the sergeant's son soon, or I don't know what I'll do.
Oh, come on. He's young. It's only natural to rebel a little.
Not by joining an actual rebellion, it's not.
And now what we just heard was that somebody's got a son that's joined a rebellion, and they're kind of dealing with that as parents. Getting back to the storytelling part, which that was obviously a part of, that's how you get your story. You're just a bird flying around the city, picking stuff up, and picking up on little bits of conversation. And why that's really interesting is because you're not just hearing one point of view, right? Like, obviously you're not just going to hear the rebels. Otherwise playing through the game, if you hear mostly from the rebels, you'll start to side with the rebels, but then you'll start hearing stuff from the citizens, and you'll start hearing stuff from the actual government, and you find out that the problem is a lot more, it's a lot more complex than all of the sides seem to think it is. For instance, the military around the city, they don't understand why the people are starting to stare at them, and they think that the people are siding with them deep down because they should know that the military is trying to do the right thing. And if you go around, a lot of the soldiers are saying that they're doing the right thing. The reason they join the military is to protect people, but it ends up kind of being oppressive, and they're trying to come to terms with the fact that they're trying to, what's the word I'm looking for? They're trying to balance the fact that it's oppressive with the morality that they're doing it for the betterment of civilization and of their people, which is understandable, and it's more human than I would imagine. And then there's the people who are starting the rebellion, who are upset with their government because they feel the government is, they're like holding medicine and keeping people sick, and it's just not making people, there's too much celebration going on among the government for beating this war. And really, the people aren't happy with the government because they feel like the government's not taking care of them. The government is doing their best the government feels they're doing what they must to protect the people, and the military are kind of in between, where they're like, and the military obviously has to be in between because it's their duty to work for their government, but it's also their prerogative to protect the people, because those are the citizens are their family and friends and stuff like that. So it's hard for them to kind of come to terms with what they're doing as well. And it's interesting, and it's interesting in that human sense of the thing, where you get to see all parts of that as this kind of omniscient being almost, that just kind of gets the little bits and pieces and gets to put together a story, which is really, you don't really see games like that these days. Most of them have an objective, and while you're not doing that, you get these cool little interesting mechanics accompanied by really awesome music, and the whole game just kind of fits together really well for what I thought, for what I imagined it would be. I thought it sounded a little pretentious when I read the description of the game, but it turned out that it's actually pretty captivating. I think the voice acting's a little bad, and the writing could use some work, but overall, the overall idea and the execution is done pretty well, I would say. See, like, those guys don't understand why there are soldiers in the slum. There's these guys up on the wall that it's pretty funny to listen to. He just is really overzealous about working for the military, and the other guy's just like, dude, do you want a bagel, man? Like, fucking cut it out. See, This guy right here.
Down on the street corner.
I think this is them.
I didn't ask, but I ended up selling my soul. John, you don't need to tell. Till I found the military. The military made me proud. John,
I can't tell if they're talking or not. I've got my headphones off because it's really loud and I didn't want it to interfere with the microphone, but they kind of talk silly, and it's not, it's got a good humor about it in some places, so it's not just constantly bad all the time. There's some good stuff in there with the bad stuff. And, you know, exploring is always fun. The basic gist of the story, because I'm not going to go through the whole thing and it'd take too long. I'd have to do a whole Let's Play series on it, but since no one's really going to get it, and I'm pretty sure the people who have played it for the month, the people who actually own the game have probably already played through it. The basic gist of the story is that the people successfully mount an attack and they assassinate the woman in charge of the city called the Great Leader. They successfully assassinate her and take over, and then like the last thing you hear from the person who directly has taken over is that she suddenly has a bigger picture of the things that are going on and starts to understand why the Great Leader did what she did. And it basically just ends on that like uncertain note of history repeating itself and of people being flawed and not able to appropriately communicate when they're in charge with the rest of everyone else, and the people that are being governed don't really see eye to eye with the people who are governing, despite the fact that it might very well be the best that the government can do. They're just, rumors spread, they're not able to keep it under control, and civilization falls apart. And like the haunting part is like the woman that takes over, the last thing she says is like, well, the people will understand, right? Like, they trust me. But I mean, you don't get the title Great Leader for not being trusted, so it's kind of like what the leader's already done. Here we see some bugs going on. Landing's a little awkward. And then you go around and you'll find some people who are talking about how they're not happy with what's happened now because they were happy before, and now that the new leader has taken over, they're in what seems to be an even worse position. So they've already got some unrest brewing, and it's just an interesting take on things. It's got a bunch of points you would never consider because you're so used to having one perspective, but then this game offers so many. And granted, they're all fictional and they're all probably biased in their own way. It's not like it's capturing a 100% true and factual moment, but it's still an interesting concept to pull off, and they've done it pretty well for the most part. Pacing's a little slow, but I mean, I guess that's kind of like so you can mull over what people are saying, and I don't know. You're tempted to want to 100% it just because you want to get all these little bits and pieces and kind of get as big of a picture as you possibly can for the whole thing. But really, most of these conversations are optional. They're shown as the little feathers when you land. You'll see, so you got like your 5 or 6 items. I don't remember. I wasn't really paying attention just now. But you got your 5 or 6 items. They'll shine really brightly if you get enough distance from them to kind of show you where you have to go objectively, and that's nice. The optional ones are just kind of feathers that float up off the ground like that over there. You can see you don't have to get that one. There's one way over there. That's one that you have to get. It's one of your golden things to put in your nest. But basically what happens is there's also 10 feathers to collect that are hidden all over the place. So it's a really good, it's a collection game for those of you with OCD. And I kind of wish that I hadn't started a new game and just played from where I was, but I didn't want to give anything away. Which is kind of stupid because I just said that I didn't plan on doing it anyway. But sorry about that, guys. Otherwise, we'd be moving at Mach speed right now because I collected all 10 of the feathers. Yeah, I guess the environment kind of has a thing going for it too. You got like these gunmen up here. I believe what happens is there was a civil war and they're just now overcoming that, and they're talking about how strong they were over the intercom for uniting as a single group of people and overthrowing the tyranny, but kind of seems like the tyranny's coming back. But yeah, I think it's a nice addition to the bundle. It's not a game that I think I would pay for, but the fact that it's included, I think, okay, see, this is where I think that the bundle did something right, in that it's humble original. It's experimental, obviously. That's cool. But it also manages to offer something on its own without actually being something that you would want to pay for. It's like a little, like a short story. Like in addition to your games, you got this little bit of a short story going on here. And I hope you understand what I mean when I say short story. Like obviously it's not a literal short story, but it's like a short little game that tells an impactful story in a relatively short amount of time. And by a short amount of time, I mean if you cut out all this flying part right here that I'm doing right now, it would actually be pretty short. We've already spent like 11 minutes, though, playing this game, according to my Audacity over there. But the actual information we've gotten is pretty small, other than what I've told you. See, I pretty much summed up the story pretty well. I don't know about pretty well. That's up to you, up to people who've played the game or designed the game to decide, I guess, how well I appropriately translated it into vocal speech just now. But yeah, it's an interesting little narrative told from the many perspectives. You could easily see each chapter is like a little short, like maybe a page, and then all together they make a single story. But yeah, I think you get the point. I don't know if you want to see me collect these last two, but I guess I'll go ahead and do it. It shouldn't take too long. Supposing I can find them. If I'm not mistaken, I think one's up there on that tower, and that's why it's shining. But it's like the only one that's ever up there, so I mistook it as something useless. But overall, the flying mechanics are really fun. The landing mechanics work pretty well. You usually land right on what you're aiming for because it seems to have a homing on the important things. But the one thing is, I noticed that I got stuck a lot. I even landed on someone's head once. That was pretty entertaining. I'd like to see a full version of the game, maybe, like polished out, I think would be cool. But otherwise, it's just it's pretty simplistic. You know, the people aren't very well modeled. They don't really move around. They're just kind of there. There's not really much interest. That's the downside, I think. Oh, I don't know where there's a bottle and a flower plant. The downside is like there's not much visual interest in flying around. So like it's just a bunch of isolated vocal events combined with your very basic flying around gameplay, which I feel like there's no real life to the city beyond the audio logs, which is a little bit disappointing if you're centering your game around flying around a city and getting to know people. Which, I mean, I guess isn't technically what they said it's about. It's about being a bird and enjoying the freedom of flying around and whatever, because you're above their petty troubles or whatever it was they said it was. But the gameplay, you still can't argue that the gameplay is not flying around as the bird. I mean, maybe they just didn't have enough time. I don't know how these humble originals work. I don't know how they're commissioned, or if they're commissioned, or if they get paid, or if they're just like, hey, you want to showcase? I imagine they must get paid, but I don't know the rhyme or reason. I don't know the deadlines. I don't know how any of that stuff works. I don't know. Maybe you have to collect all the feathers to unlock the last one, because I don't seem to see it shining about here anywhere. Oh, nope. Is that it over there? Are those different kinds of lights? There's that burp I told you about early on. It might just be another feather, it looks like. Nope, that's waterfall. Those are feathers. Those are just speeches. I think this guy over here says something about his kid dying, which is pretty sad. And that's another thing, right? Like, all these stories are sad, but I don't think you ever see any of them come to conclusion, which is understandable. A few of them have continuous dialogue, not this guy specifically. You okay, mate? Pale's ghost. My son died. Yeah, see, that's pretty sad. They think that it's the government, but it turns out they think, okay, so the conspiracy theory is that the government's hoarding medicine for themselves, but then the lady gets in power and she's like, oh, there's not a stockpile of medicine as it turns out. Dude, where is this last one? I wish I could find the last little tidbit. I also wish there's like an artist over here. He says some pretty dank stuff. He has some dank maymays to drop all over you. He's really poetic. He's like, oh, look at me. I'm an artist. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, another feather. Finding the feathers was pretty challenging, especially like there's 11 of them. I don't know why they picked 11. They could have done 10, in my opinion, but they picked 11. Really triggering my OCD there, buddy. But, where's that last one? That's the sound birds make. And this is another reason I didn't want to do the whole thing, because I would run out of things to say so fast. Like what I just said is the entirety of the game, and there's not much substance to it beyond that. The rest of it is literally just flying around as a bird. So could you imagine me doing this like 4 times? There's the last thing, by the way. We found it. We did it. Doing this 4 times, man. It's not necessarily a negative thing to do on your own, but it's one of those things that it's not one of those things where you can do it and have a running commentary. And see, like that was pretty good landing anyway. But yeah, that's pretty much the game. And it took me a lot of silences there just to get to this point. So I mean, if you want to see the rest of the gameplay, you just tell me. We'll boot this thing up. We'll do it all together. But I think my description should be sufficient for you to get an idea over whether you like it or not. As you can see, as you progress, the city kind of changes in tone. Like it's slightly less vibrant, and by the time you get to the third one, it's even less so vibrant. But when she takes over, it's vibrant again. It's literally just a visual representation of the cycle. Like it's slowly getting worse, and then suddenly everything will seem better. But then things are gonna get worse again. It's gonna repeat itself, and it's kind of droll in that sense. But it's also kind of freeing because, like the bird, you can be above it all. You can just not pay attention to all this petty nonsense, and you can try to live your life the way that's best for you. Because regardless of whether you're under the tyrant or whether someone else takes over, you yourself might not see that much of a difference. You know what I mean? Now, obviously, this game isn't glorifying having a tyrant governor by any sense of the word. Like, I don't believe that these people are North Korea over here. But, I think it's just trying to say, remember that the government's people too, man. And you may feel like you have all the answers, but you might actually make things a lot worse with your small scope of things. And that really, the only true way to get a full scope of things is to be attentive to your surroundings and just kind of just stay above the strife, but still keep your eye out for the developing stories and kind of figure it out from there. I don't know what the message of this game is. I'll be completely honest with you. I'm struggling for things to say, but I think that we'll just leave it at that. I think that's all the time I have for today's episode, ladies and gentlemen. So remember that failure is not the worst case scenario, so go on with your bad selves. And I will see you guys in the next episode, where hopefully we'll be talking about something a little less depressing than our government oppressing us and us being even worse oppressors. Stay awesome.